Ladies and gents, today we're going to be finding out why Philippines is the only country in Asia welcoming Ukrainians with open arms. You know, the world is saying no, but the Philippines are opening the door for them, and it's almost common for the Philippines. Everyone knows they're very kind, or at least most people probably watching this know that they're very kind, and that's just the thing they do. But is there a reason why other countries aren't doing this? Are the Philippines being too kind, or is it just seem obvious that they should be letting Ukrainians in? Let's find out.
Would you be willing to leave behind everything, your home, your family, your memories, just to stay alive? Millions of Ukrainians
Probably.
had to do exactly that. But while the world turned away, a small country in Southeast Asia opened its arms to welcome them. Why the Philippines? A country that's not rich, not close to Ukraine, and has no special TIs suddenly becomes a
Special TIs? Okay, so this is an absolute AI video. Okay, great. Special TIs is crazy. That's another thing, though. Ukraine and Philippines are nowhere near each other.
TIs suddenly becomes a destination of hope. In this video, you'll see a story of humanity beyond borders, a lesson in compassion that earned global respect. Here's why the United Nations praised the Philippines in front of the entire world.
Okay.
This isn't the first time the Philippines saved refugees.
So this already seems like a common Philippine W. This isn't like being too kind. This is like
The
Well,
powerful
let's see.
story that happened more than 80 years ago, but still remains unknown to many. Did you know? In 1939, as the fires of war began to spread across Europe, the world was shaken by a nightmare known as the Holocaust, the genocide of the Jews. But the heartbreaking truth, the world stayed silent. Many wealthy nations like the UK, the US, Canada, and Australia refused to take in Jewish refugees out of fear of economic collapse, security risks, or simply racial prejudice.
Whoa!
Hundreds of thousands tried to flee, but every door was slammed shut. Then, from a distant place in Asia, the president of the Philippines at that time, Manuel L. Quezon, made a decision that defied all political logic. His country was still poor, still under US influence, still not independent, yet he chose compassion. We are poor,
Compassion.
but we are not heartless, Quezon.
This might be a common word we hear in this video. This compassion seems like the number one quality that y'all have that maybe not other countries have at all.
He quietly ordered visas to be issued, expanded immigration procedures, even bought land and built temporary shelters to welcome Jewish refugees to live in Manila. 1,300 lives were saved while the rest of the world turned its back. Think about this. As a country that wasn't even independent, could Quezon have been stopped by the Americans? With an economy still reeling from the 1930s crash, could his people have protested? With Japan already watching and war approaching, could he have risked national security? The answer is yes. But he did it anyway. Because he believed that the value of human life was greater than any geopolitical calculation. And something
These visuals are not the Philippines, by the way.
amazing happened. Those rescued Jews built new lives in the Philippines. They had children, built communities, and contributed to medicine, education, science, and business. Today, many of their descendants still return to Manila, laying flowers at the Jewish Memorial Park, land donated by Quezon himself. Some elderly survivors now in their 90s say, "If it weren't for President Quezon, I would not have survived, and 4 generations after me would not exist." This story is not just history. It is a legacy of compassion.
That's crazy.
While the world
Compassion again, bro. Wait, that's actually crazy, though. When you really think about it, if they had no other country to go to, they're cooked. Their bloodline is cooked.
chose silence,
Crazy.
one small, poor, and faraway country stood up for what was right. And now, 80 years later, that same spirit lives on. As the Philippines once again opens its arms to Ukrainians, becoming a beacon of hope in the darkness of war. This is not just an old tale, it's a tradition that has lasted for decades. While the rest of Southeast Asia was still uncertain, the Philippines once again opened its arms to people drifting at sea. Have you ever heard of the Vietnamese boat people? After
No.
the fall of Saigon in 1975, hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese risked their lives on small, fragile boats, escaping the new regime or hunger and persecution. They had no idea where the shore would be, no GPS, no food, and no guarantee they'd...
No GPS? That's almost worse than no food.
They held on to just one belief, that they had to leave if they wanted to live free.
Yep.
And then, many boats were attacked.
What are they showing? Is this the Philippines now? Wait a minute. This might be the Philippines. I don't know.
By pirates. Many died of thirst in the South China Sea.
Trying to figure out
Those
what
who were
country
lucky
this is.
enough to reach land silently hoped they wouldn't be turned away. Once again, the Philippines became a shining light of humanity. In Bataan, the Philippine Refugee Processing Center, PRPC, was established.
Okay,
It wasn't
W.
just a temporary shelter, it was a gateway of hope. Vietnamese refugees learned English. They received job training. They were given psychological support after the nightmares they endured at sea. And later, they were resettled in countries like the US, Canada, and Australia.
So not only were they allowed to enter the country, they got jobs, psychological help, everything they could need. They got everything they could need. And then they also got the ability to go to a more thriving country afterwards. That's insane.
But what made this story even more special was how the Filipino people treated the Vietnamese. It wasn't just acceptance, it was compassion. Many Filipino
again.
families welcomed Vietnamese into their homes and shared their meals. Some Vietnamese married Filipinos and built their lives here.
And you know what? Hey, I've mentioned this story before, but I was sick as a dog when I was in the Philippines 3 months ago, something like that. And I was already going to stay at someone's house, but I got sick and they still let me in. They literally gave me a bed to myself. We had a bunch of friends. We were probably all going to share a room, but since I was sick, they gave me a bed to myself. They fed me food. They took care of me, bro. They gave me medicine. Like, it is that compassion that the Filipinos just have. Like, you might live in a different country watching this and think like that should be everywhere, but it's just not. Like most people will be like that, but you really will be surprised that there's a lot of places in the world where people are just messed up. Like, simple as that. They're just messed up.
Children grew up between two cultures speaking both languages and forever grateful to the land that embraced their parents. And did you know? Even today, every year groups of former boat people return to Bataan to remember and give thanks.
Wow.
They stand before a stone marker engraved with the word, "Freedom silent, unable to speak," because they know that without the Philippines they might not exist today. So, when the Philippines welcomes Ukrainians today, it's not a random act. It's a tradition, a part of their national identity. In an age of closed borders, they choose to open their hearts. And now, they are doing it again for the people of Ukraine. Once more, as the world burns in conflict, the Philippines chooses to stand with those who have nowhere else to go. February 2022, the world was stunned. Russia launched a full-scale war against Ukraine. Missiles struck residential areas. Tanks crushed city streets. An entire modern and civilized nation was suddenly turned into a living hell. Millions of Ukrainians, especially women, children, and the elderly, were forced to leave their homes with nothing but a few bags in hand. There was no time to prepare. No one knew where they would go. Only one thing was clear: they had to leave if they wanted to survive. By mid-2023, more than 6.8 million Ukrainians had become refugees, one of the largest displacements of the 21st century.
That's the type of thing where you gotta look at your life and just be like, damn, I got it good. Like, no matter how bad it is, are you a refugee in a war right now? Most likely not. Holy, that's gotta be so scary and just, that's horrible.
Neighboring countries like Poland, Moldova, and Romania were overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Many Western nations had to
Fair.
tighten refugee programs due to political and economic strain.
My God.
And slowly, the world began to grow silent, just like in 1939. But in the middle of that silence, the Philippines spoke out. A Southeast Asian country more than 8,000 kilometers from Ukraine declared it was ready to welcome
That's even farther than it is for me, I think.
Ukrainian refugees. Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara made a public statement. The Philippines will always honor its humanitarian commitments. If needed, we will open our doors. Immediately, the UNCR, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, praised this move, calling it a rare example of compassion and proactive leadership in Asia.
Cinema. There's the word again. This compassion stuff is beating politics any day of the week. Like, no matter what your view is on this situation, we're not getting political in this chat today. We are strictly just listening to this story and just feeling this literally God-tier level of compassion.
During a global crisis.
This can't be real. Is this Ukraine?
But it wasn't just words.
That's a crazy
The Philippines
theory.
backed its promise with action, activating an international standard reception system. They provided temporary housing, assisted with legal documentation, guaranteed access to education, healthcare, and safety, worked with humanitarian organizations to offer mental health support, language training, and cultural integration. And did you know? The Philippines is one of the very few Asian nations to sign all three major treaties on refugees and stateless persons. The 1951 Geneva Convention,
yeah?
the 1967 Protocol, and the 1954 Convention. This means when a Ukrainian refugee sets foot in the Philippines, they aren't just protected, they are allowed to live. What do Ukrainians in the Philippines feel? A woman named Katerina, 34, told an international newspaper, "I knew nothing about the Philippines before I fled, but now I know this is a safe place where people don't see you as a stranger. And what's even more special, the Philippines didn't do this for attention. There was no political gain, no pressure from superpowers. They simply chose
no money gain, not getting none of this, not getting no, like he said, political gain, just straight up compassion.
When the world builds walls, we build bridges. A Filipino official once said that. Not just words, real action. While many countries stop at making beautiful statements, the Philippines quietly does what truly matters, protecting refugees through the rule of law. Have you ever thought about what happens after a refugee is granted entry? No home, no belongings, no language, no friends or family, sometimes not even a nationality. In many countries, even when refugees are accepted, they're not allowed to live like human beings. They can't go to school. They don't get medical care. They're not allowed to work. They have no legal protection, and they can be deported at any time. But in the Philippines, that doesn't happen. It's not a coincidence that the UNCR recognizes the Philippines as one of the rare countries in Asia with a truly humane and comprehensive refugee protection system. The Philippines has signed and fully implements the world's three most important treaties on refugee rights. The 1951 Geneva Convention defining refugee rights and obligations. The 1967 Protocol expanding protection without time or regional limits. The 1954 Convention on Stateless Persons, ensuring people are not made invisible in society. They didn't just sign the treaties, they put them into real action through law. The Philippines created a special government unit, the Refugees and Stateless Persons Protection Unit, under the Department of Justice. This unit is responsible for reviewing refugee applications, granting official protective status, issuing documents and residence permits, and working with international organizations to ensure human rights are upheld. Here's a concrete example. Ukrainians in the Philippines are not kept in closed camps. They stay in government-supported hostels or humanitarian shelters.
Oh, okay.
Children can attend public schools. Adults can learn English for free and work legally if needed.
Dang.
There is no discrimination, no stigma.
I figured there was like certain like areas where they would put them all in, but I guess not. Like obviously the whole video has been talking about how they get like pretty much full access, but I still in my head I was thinking that like the homes and stuff would be in like kind of like shelter type of homes, like maybe big buildings where they're all gathered together, or maybe like kind of like camp type of things. But wow, they get actual access to literally the whole country.
Only support and understanding. The system also partners with UNCR, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, IAM International Organization for Migration, and local NGOs to build a full network of care from healthcare education and job training to legal aid, mental health, and cultural orientation.
Okay.
And this is what makes the Philippines.
This is the smartest video I've ever watched. I don't even know what anything he just said was or meant, but sounds good.
It's truly different. They don't see refugees as a burden to control, but as people who deserve a chance.
Okay.
Did
now
you
I understand.
know? Many refugees who once arrived in the Philippines later became teachers, doctors, entrepreneurs,
Oh my God.
and voices of hope for vulnerable communities.
All right.
From people with no place to belong, they became part of a new society. And it all began with that first gesture of welcome through action, not just words.
Right.
The untold story. Zelensky thanks the Philippines on Manila soil. Sometimes, a simple thank you is not just a diplomatic gesture. It's a recognition of a kindness that can change the fate of a nation.
Yeah.
June 3rd, 2024, what seemed like a quiet event in Southeast Asia suddenly drew the eyes of the world. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stepped onto the soil of Manila for the first time in a special visit. There was no grand red carpet, no lavish ceremony, but one thing deeply moved him: the presence of Ukrainian refugees welcomed by the Philippines during the brutal war. In his address before the Philippine Congress, Zelensky said, "We never imagined that a country more than 8,000 kilometers away would be one of the first to open its heart to Ukrainians.
For real.
The Philippines didn't ask what we had to offer in return. They simply chose to be humane." And at that very session, he made an announcement never before seen in the history of their bilateral TIs.
Wait, I want to see how many miles that is. It's just about 5,000 miles. Okay, so it's not farther than the USA. For me, it takes 8,000 miles to get to the Philippines in Manila. So Ukraine takes 5,000, which is still an insane amount.
Ukraine will open an official embassy in Manila, not just for diplomacy, but out of gratitude. It wasn't just a step forward in diplomatic relations, it was a symbol of trust between a nation still fighting for freedom and a nation that consistently chooses conscience over convenience. Did you know? Although the Philippines
really the heroes, man. Oh my gosh.
and Ukraine had diplomatic TIs since 1992, they had little deep interaction. It was the war in 2022 and the act of the Philippines welcoming Ukrainian refugees that rewrote the relationship.
Right.
From a faraway Eastern European country, Ukraine now sees the Philippines as a true friend during its darkest hour.
As a hero.
And it goes beyond
I mean,
diplomacy. In Ukraine, local media
Not
published
just a friend.
heartfelt stories about the Philippines. People shared
Wait,
photos.
hold on, let me get diplomatic for a second. Y'all low-key owe them one. I know Philippines, y'all are not gonna ask Ukraine for like a solid, you know. You're gonna say, don't worry, Ukraine, you guys don't owe us anything.
But hey, Ukrainians, if you're watching this,
Come on, you owe them, man. You owe them a little bit. Yo, that's crazy.
The Philippine flag with the word "Dziękuję," meaning thank you. Some Ukrainian organizations even launched donation drives, sending gifts to Filipino communities as a way of giving back.
Oh, okay.
Take a moment
There you go.
and reflect. The
They did 'em a
Philippines
solid.
is not a rich country. It has no nuclear weapons. It holds no global dominance.
It has balut, though. Although it may not be the most powerful, it has balut. So, I mean, that could end war, if you ask me.
Of another nation, they opened their arms. And here's the miracle. Kindness does not disappear, it comes back in the most beautiful ways. So now we've completed this 5-part journey, each chapter revealing one piece of a greater story.
Right.
That the Philippines is more than just a nation, it's a humanitarian symbol the world must recognize. You've just heard a story not only about war and refugees, but about moral choices in chaotic times. When fear makes nations shut their doors, when compassion becomes a luxury, the Philippines, a small, humble country, dares to stand for humanity. From the Jews in 1939 to the Vietnamese boat people in 1975, and now to thousands of Ukrainians in a modern-day war. The Philippines never asks where you come from. They only ask, do you need us? And because of that, people are still alive. Children are still being born.
Dang.
Futures are still unfolding because one country chose not to turn away.
What is that?
If you believe this story deserves to be shared, spread this video. Let the world know that compassion has not vanished. And what do you think? If a small country like the Philippines can do this, can the world do more?
Absolutely.
Share your thoughts in the comments.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Because we're not just discussing history, we're helping shape the future. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell.
Okay. Even the AI knows how to do a YouTube video. That's good. That was a beautiful story. I mean, it started almost 100 years ago when the Philippines wasn't even an independent country yet. They were still colonized. Like, bro, they've been doing this after all the struggles that all the biggest struggles that the Philippines have been through with Spain and America and wars, and they're still doing it now even when they're independent. That's like, hey man, that is next level compassion, and shout out to the Philippines. Hopefully everything's going to get better in Ukraine, and yeah, comment what you think down below. Peace.